Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Rooted in Public Health for today's panel. Keep us safe, confronting intimate partner violence in college. My name is Naomi Mosier, and I'll be your moderator today. I am an advocate grounded in Black feminist praxis, health equity, and community wellness. I earned my BA in political science from Howard University, my MPH from the George Washington University, and I'm currently pursuing a DRPH at Morgan State University. My activism centers Black women's lived experiences and the intersections of race, gender, and health. I co-led the first maternal morbidity and mortality community intervention at New York Presbyterian Hospital in Harlem, advancing culturally responsive and data-driven strategies to improve outcomes in Black communities. As the founder of Rooted in Public Health, I amplify marginalized voices through research, advocacy, and mentorship, expanding public health scholarship rooted in justice and liberation. Before we begin, I would like to establish that this is a safe space, and we ask that you listen with both an open mind and heart and respect everyone who is willing to share the intimate parts of themselves. We also ask that you use mindful and respectful language when asking any questions. I also want to offer a gentle trigger warning. The topics we'll be discussing today, intimate partner violence, trauma, and healing, are sensitive and may bring up strong emotions or memories. Please prioritize your mental and emotional well being throughout this conversation. If at any point you need to step away, take a break, or ground yourself, we fully support and respect that choice. There are resources available if you need support during or after the panel, and we encourage you to reach out in whatever way feels safest to you. Your well being comes first. What is Rooted in Public Health? Rooted in Public Health is a community-centered public health platform committed to transforming how health equity is understood, taught, and practiced. Rooted in Public Health centers culture, lived experience, and structural analysis as essential tools for building healthier futures, particularly for communities that have been historically marginalized. It bridges research, storytelling, and advocacy to create accessible conversations about public health while pushing institutions to rethink the systems and narratives that shape people's lives. Through education, analysis, and community engagement, Rooted in Public Health cultivates a space where justice and equity driven solutions can take root and grow. Today, we'll be talking about intimate partner violence. According to the National Center for PTSD, IPV can include physical, sexual, or psychological abuse or stalking. Acts of IPV range in how often they occur or how violent they are. It can happen to women or men who have intimate relations with women, men, or both. IPV disproportionately impacts Black women with experiencing IPV at a rate twice that of the national average. This panel is intended to be conversational and informative while holding space for survivors and professionals to connect. I am honored to introduce our panelists, each bringing a distinct lens and depth of experience to this discussion. First, we have Jennifer Elliott. Jennifer Elliott, MSW, is a Schomburg Fellow and doctoral candidate at the University of Buffalo School of Social Work. Her research focuses on intimate partner violence in the Black community, culturally responsive services for Black women survivors, and trauma-informed interventions. She also serves as an adjunct professor at Buffalo State University and the University at Buffalo. Jennifer co-founded UB's Association of Black Social Workers chapter and previously held the position as director for Tree Care College's Office on Violence Against Women's grant. She also co-founded B-Bridge, an initiative advancing culturally responsive research, training, and community engagement to support Black women survivors. Next, we have Kennedy Roberts. Kennedy Roberts is a compassionate and driven professional dedicated to social justice and community advocacy. A summa cum laude graduate of Howard University, she currently works in lead operations at Atticus Law Firm, where she helps connect clients with legal resources they need to secure fair outcomes. With a background in community outreach and a passion for equity, she's preparing to pursue law and policy work centered on criminal justice reform. She is committed to challenging systemic inequities and creating a more just, restorative legal system for all communities. Next, we have Andrena Williams. Andrena Williams is a first-year Master of Public Health student at New York University, concentrating in community health science and practice, and a counselor in adult psychiatry at Yale New Haven Hospital. She earned a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Women and Gender Studies from Quinnipiac University, where she mentored underrepresented students and received the Cornelius Meyer Award for Outstanding Research in Psychology. As a survivor and mental health professional, Andrena is passionate about addressing disparities in research and resources related to adverse childhood experiences and intimate partner violence within the African American community. Finally, but definitely not least, we have Ryan Simone Duncan. Ryan Simone Duncan is a 25-year-old Howard alum, podcaster, sexual assault and abortion advocate, and lobbyist. Raised overseas in Asia as a military brat, she always knew that her experiences were one to share. It wasn't until she partnered with Planned Parenthood when she realized the true impact of storytelling and has built a career out of it. As the topic of numerous published journalists, she aims to continue her work in advocacy and remain a beacon of hope and love. She is a public figure who is passionate about mental health and amplifying the voices of the minority. She intends to teach others how to build the bridges between communities and dismantle what's been generationally broken with the means to build more inclusive and safer systems. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. I'm excited to begin our discussion. Throughout this panel, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and during the Q&A, we will answer as many as we can. Like I said earlier, I'm so excited to begin, and I'll start with our first question. What first inspired you all to share your story and begin advocacy around IPV prevention?
I can start us off. Okay, hello everyone. Again, my name is Jen Elliott, and what got me started, what really inspired me is, so I have a background as being a domestic violence advocate, and I was a domestic violence advocate for from 2016 to 2020, which I joke that 2020 was 5 years in itself. So it was a very crazy time for a lot of people, but especially in intimate partner violence. And through that experience, I did notice a lot of, things that felt like discrepancies when it came to addressing intimate partner violence within the Black community. Well, first, a lot of the information that I was seeing as an advocate, I noticed that there wasn't a lot where I lived. A lot of my friends and family didn't know the agency I worked for. They didn't know the language that I was talking, things of that nature. So I could see the gap in awareness. I could see the gap in education. But then again, I also seen the discrepancies in services, and it really made me curious as to one, why were these gaps existing, and what I can do to better fill those gaps. And so that encouraged me to go into get my master's in social work. However, when I was going through that process, I still wasn't getting the answers to my questions. I realized that there was a lack of research surrounding this topic as a whole. And so again, being curious and wondering like, oh, I'm still not being able to fulfill the gaps. I was getting the tools in order to be a better social worker, but I still wasn't being able to fill all the discrepancies and gaps and answer all these questions that I still had. So that's what prompted me to pursue a doctoral degree in focusing again on cultural responsiveness towards survivors of intimate partner violence, specifically Black women, because throughout this journey, I still wasn't able to again have any type of answers or get any of these gaps filled. So now I'm here doing the actual research, finally getting the answers to a lot of the questions that I had. So, and I'm still learning, right? I'm still noticing other questions that I'm starting to have. So we know it's a lifelong journey, right? But that's what initially inspired just that curiosity of just why is this happening? Why is no one doing anything? How can I be part of the solution?
I guess I could share why I chose to share my story since I have experienced intimate partner violence. So, getting out of it, I realized that a lot of what was done was meant to silence me. And as a way to apologize to my younger self, because this did occur about going on 5 years now. So I was 18, 17, 18 at the time. Um, it was more so as an apology to my younger self and the women in my family that have dealt with intimate partner violence since I could remember. It's been something that's been generational in my household, unfortunately. And I realized that everyone seemed to just be content with their situation. And I realized I did not want that for myself at all. So I began to speak out about it. And also, when you experience IPV from like when you find yourself at the intersection of race, gender, and sexuality, it is very isolating. So if sharing my story could get someone one step closer to safety, healing, etc., I'll continue to do so even when it is hard, because I will say it is hard sometimes revisiting this topic. But I just want to continue to advocate and share that story because I know when it was me, being that my relationship was with another woman, I was very hesitant to share what I was going through because I assumed that no one would take it seriously, etc. So I just want to be here to show some sort of representation for that subcategory of the Black women population and just try to get everyone as much help and advocacy as possible.
Yeah, I really actually resonate with that, Andrina, with wanting to show up for your past self. I think in my experience and my experience with IPV, um, at the time I didn't even know there was like a word or like a label for what happened to me. And so I didn't even know really how to categorize what I had experienced. And so I think especially through Naomi, like with the work she's done in the field and like really highlighting that this is a thing, it kind of allowed me to come to awareness like, oh, this is what I experienced. Okay. And she's honestly really been integral. And like, this is my first time really ever like sharing my story with other people outside of people that are like really close in my life. So it's just allowed me to take my voice back in what I've experienced. And so that's why I'm here.
I would love to close on that question, especially following what Andrina said, because for me, I feel like it all hit me at once. I had a more recent assault this past January, and it was also with a woman. And when it happened to me, like it happened in public, I was groped by my genitals at the workplace, like unprovoked, and just seeing how unprofessional that the job place handled it and how I was just dismissed and they just had they had a lack for caring about my situation because they're just like, oh, two girls, it's like I feel like when it's women, when it's two women, they don't take it seriously because, a lot of times they sexualize, situations between women. And when that happened to me, I didn't realize how much this has happened before and not just not between a woman particularly, but like just assaults in my life. Like when that happens, like my PTSD, everything came to the frontal cortex, and I was just like, oh my God, this has happened before. I've been raped before. I've been touched inappropriately before. I've been coerced. And it almost felt like if I didn't share that it would kill me. Like I felt like this weight on my chest, like my body, like I had this ache in my leg ever since that had happened. And I really feel like it's because I haven't been able to get all the support that I needed. So like a lot of people don't think to or don't care to think that this isn't just like mentally destructive, but it's also physically like the mind and the body, they're so connected. And I've just found through telling my story, it's brought me so much strength. It's brought me so much. Also, like what you guys are saying, like it's like a thank you to the past version of myself that endured that. And it's like it's really liberating. So I just want to show other people that they can also free themselves and that there are people that care and want to help in these situations.
Thank you all so much for sharing your story and being pillars of strength in embodying it for all of us. survivors and advocates. Reflecting on your experiences and the experiences that you've seen, what kind of supports, emotional, academic, community-based, did you need or do you feel like you see the community needing at this time and during IPV?
I think specifically my experience happened while I was in college. So I think in general, my university probably could have done more in educating people about like what intimate partner violence is. Like I feel like we get the regular like sexual harassment, like trainings and stuff that you have to go through, but just diving more deeply into intimate partner violence and like date rape and things like that that aren't talked about as much and that I feel like sometimes can have a gray area around them so that when those things happen, you one know that it happened to you and then can reach out for help afterwards.
I like to go off what Kennedy said. I think Kennedy raises a good point because oftentimes when we talk about intimate partner violence within these settings, it's treated all almost like a domestic violence, like a one size fit all glove, right? So it's like the same approach towards intimate partner violence. One, there's a lack of education on intimate partner violence in itself. And then we follow up with it's treated like this generic thing. And we know intimate partner violence looks completely different from race, gender, sexual orientation, all these things manipulate how one will experience intimate partner violence, right? And so we really need to be able to address and that goes within that cultural responsive, cultural competency piece, right? What does that look like? And being able to educate everyone on the different forms and also talking about, because Kennedy mentioned that too, that normalization, that gray area, which can be connected a lot to normalization, right? Or a culture of, oh, well, this might be acceptable and things of that nature. We won't dive too much into that because I know we'll have that as an upcoming question, but that's also a piece of it too. So when we are providing education in these settings, they need to be inclusive, all inclusive. And I can attest to that from my practice experience, as a practitioner, because I've worked with a lot of clients who could not recognize that they were survivors because their environment says so, because I'm a Black woman. I've worked with so many survivors who come from, the LGBTQ plus IA community who have been told that they are not victims or survivors of intimate partner violence because they're in same-sex relationships. All these narratives and these myths are really having an impact. And if we don't do anything as far as education and awareness to address that, if we just keep bringing out this one size fit all glove, we're going to continue to have these gaps, right? So that's definitely something that we need to explore on the institutional side.
I also think especially important, I went to HBCU. So I think as well with my experience, there was this dynamic of like, as far as like reporting what happened to you, it's like you don't want to report a Black man and get him kicked out of school. Like, so I think it's especially important at HBCUs where they want you guys to be like a family and all of this stuff. And so it kind of feels like you're betraying your brother or something like that when you do, or sister, if you report what happened to you. So
I want to say that I feel like what I needed the most after this first happened to me, and it's crazy to say even the first time, like, um, I think what was really crucial is the follow-up in therapy. I'm a storyteller, so I'm gonna tell a little story. I won't take up too much time, but when I had the first, well, I won't say it, I lost my virginity. My virginity was taken from me, and I didn't recognize that it was a a rape situation because, like you said, there's lack of education on these things. And I feel like these things really start at home. Like, we need to start educating our kids about what consent is, what coercion is, what no is, and that it's a full sentence. And with my situation, when it happened to me, the police got word of it, my parents got word of it. And because I didn't know what coercion was, let alone statutory rape, I I was like, well, I consented. I said yes eventually. So I didn't want to go through with the reporting because I was afraid that, people wouldn't believe me that, and I was new to the school. So I was like, I don't want to be the girl that got raped. So I said it was a lie because, I didn't know any better. But what I really wish that my parents would have done is check in on me and put me in therapy anyway, because I feel like from that moment on, like it kind of altered my brain a little bit. And it led me into this really weird trajectory of running into the same kind of, perpetrator and expecting like, because once that happens to you, especially when it's your first sexual encounter, that was like my idea of what sex is supposed to be like. So it was very, I really feel like if I was in therapy and I was sat down like, yo, this was not supposed to happen. This is illegal. Like it would have changed my whole life following. I wouldn't have gotten assaulted as much as I have because like I would have had that conversation. And I just wish families would like prompt that more instead of tuck it away because they're they don't know how to have the conversation or they're ashamed to.
I would like to add to that. I feel like with my experience, I think I would have benefited more from some sort of familial support. I realized now that I tell this story, I was a minor when this actually started. Started in high school and went on into my first year of my undergrad. And I wish the adults in my life stepped in at all, if I'm being completely honest, because no one did. I kind of had to take up the upper hand when I turned 18 and realized like this is not what I wanted to deal with anymore and take it from there. But excuse me if my voice is shaky. I don't tell this story that much, but so I do think I had a lack of support from family because they were already disappointed with the relationship as a whole. So I think when the intimate partner violence started, I didn't have that safety net that I felt like I could even comfortably let my family know what was occurring. And my life at home was pretty horrendous. There was a lot of domestic violence already taking place in the house. There was at a I'm a little bit of a storyteller, but I won't share too much. I had a brother that was like dealing with like addiction problems. So there was a lot going on in the house that I too was trying to escape. So I think that relationship was like an escape for me in some way, but then it went bad. But I could not go back home to family comfortably because to them it was more so like you think you're grown, so do what you want to do. But I was only 16. Um so I wish that I had that familial support. I think it could have done less damage. Um but I also wish I had some sort of support from the institution that I ended up going to in college. I went to Quinnipiac University. It's a PWI. It's as PWI as it comes, as I can explain. I would say when I first started, I was a little bit of a trailblazer. When I got on campus, I was advocating for and against everything that I could. And I think even having that sort of target on my back didn't allow me to even feel comfortable enough to go to anyone at the university to share what I was going through. Because even when they would speak about things such as like the Title IX coordinator, this person did not even live in Connecticut. We had to meet with them virtually. So there was like that disconnect that no one felt comfortable enough to even share anything that they were going through. And I will say, even though this is not higher education, since it did start when I was in high school, I wish my school did more because I realized with my specific situation, I was a straight A student. I kept my, excuse me to curse really quick. I kept my shit together academically. So on paper, I looked very good, but we have 180 days in school and I only attended 94 of my senior year. No one no one cared to look into that and more so was just like you need to attend the last 4 weeks of school in order to graduate. No one asked any questions. It was just like a 1, 2, and we're done. I really wish that the adults in the situation did more, especially because I was a minor. So yes, I will say I wish I had more familial and like community-based support. I would have definitely benefited from that. And we could have avoided 2 years worth of what I experienced. But yeah.
I heard you guys mention a gray area in this conversation, which pivots us to our next question. Many survivors describe a gray area in recognizing abuse. Survivors, how did you begin to identify what was happening to you as violence? And practitioners and researchers, what do you commonly see identified as the quote unquote gray area? And is that a slippery slope?
I think I can speak to that. I'll share a little bit. So I think earlier in the relationship that I was in, there were a lot of like coercive control tactics that I wasn't picking up on as a form of violence or abuse. And some of those, I wrote it down. So if you see me looking like to the side, I'm looking at my other computer. So like making it difficult to interact with my friends, telling me where I need to be, when I need to be there, what I need to wear, etc. To me, at 16, that translates as I got it good. I got a very overprotective partner. They're looking out for me. But over time, it started to get more intense and more violent. And I myself didn't necessarily label anything as violence until it started to get physical. Um, so that's my little gray area. There were also a lot of like manipulation tactics that were used that for me at that age, especially being how like I would say, I don't know what the proper word to use is, but I was a very emotional person. I would try to resonate with everyone and be there to support them. At this time, my partner was using a lot of her suicidal ideation as a way to control the relationship. So if I showed any desire to want to leave, immediately it would be okay, well if you leave, I'm gonna kill myself. So now you have to live with that. So being 16, you already have a rough life at home. So, like, you're here now with this older partner. You're glorified being with someone that's what, 2 years older than you. It didn't end out so good, but like, once you give someone that responsibility of like, well, if you leave me, I'm gonna end my life. For me to have to live with that, I just couldn't. So that made me stay. But yeah, I will say when I started identifying it as abuse, it's when it got physical, but unfortunately, this is when it got more dangerous for me. So yeah.
I can
Um,
go next and answer. When we talk about the gray area, for me, in relation to doing research, it really was like gray areas like really rooted in like normalization of intimate partner violence. And so I did a study, a qualitative study on examining Black women's perceptions of relationships through the lens of in connection, I'm sorry, to social media. And so in that research study, I had interviewed 10 Black women. All majority of the participants were college aged and or college students, all Black women again. And we talked, I was just curious as how was social media influencing how they perceived themselves in relationships or how they felt like they were perceived in relationships. And a lot of it had went back to like a lot of cultural factors. So they were either feeling like they were being portrayed as the angry Black woman, the strong Black woman, and then feeling like they had to carry those narratives in those relationships, which even led to other narratives like that ride or die mentality, right? I'm going to ride for my man or ride for my partner, I'm sorry, for no matter what. And so these narratives that again are usually rooted in like normalization in relationships really created a gray area for this population because they were getting confused because they would know that this felt wrong, but they were feeling like, okay, well, I'm just going to have to, tough it out. Or I'm just going to have to be that ride or die because that's what my culture is telling me. And then it even got to a point where they felt like they were being influenced by celebrity couples, right? So celebrity couples are being idolized. I can't tell you how many times is it Krishan and Blueface kept coming up as like, I know. And it kept coming up as, well, this is a couple and they're getting the attention and they have these fights, but they make up and they have to give each other elaborate gifts. And I'm no. I'm like, this is unhealthy. We are not going to put these people on a pedestal. But even when they did have quote unquote good role models on social media, such as they mentioned Sierra and Russell Wilson. But the point I was trying to get to them after we had our after I gathered the data was that we don't have to idolize any type of couple, right? Because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And then most of the time when we have these couples and then something happens, then it's, oh, Black love is destroyed. So we could just take the behaviors that we are our behaviors, but also making sure that we're individualize our relationships to ourselves and our needs, right? Making it really a personable action. But it's that normalization of digital media and just what is normalized and what is now seen as okay, behavior such as jealousy, controlling communication, digital monitoring. These are just some things that are now being idolized as love, right? Oh, this person loves me now because, you know, they're doing these things. We're living in a culture right now where a lot of unhealthy and abusive tactics are becoming normalized, and it's creating such a big gray area on what is intimate partner violence, going to that education and awareness. And it's important for us to address it again because it becomes blurry for a lot of people. And when it becomes unchecked, it'll escalate, right? So what might start off as digital abuse can keep escalating into psychological abuse, physical abuse. The point is to be preventative. We don't want it to be escalating to these points. But even if it doesn't escalate to physical, psychological abuse is just as impactful as physical. Working with, as a practitioner, I've had so many clients literally tell me, I wish my partner would just hit me and get it over with. I don't like the manipulation games. I don't like feeling like I'm being gaslit, where my reality is constantly being disoriented. It's just we gotta address the normalization and violence in general, but especially when we talk about in the Black community, because we have to acknowledge that this population in itself has a history of violence perpetuated onto that population, which makes it so that we are more susceptible to experiencing it and it also being normalized. I know that was a long-winded answer, but I just wanted to put out that whole piece so you can get that picture.
Yeah, and I really want to speak on the part of you saying normalization. Before I get into that, whoever is watching, if you feel comfortable turning on your camera, I would love that. I'm a really personal person and I like to look who I'm talking to, but I respect if you don't want to. But to answer that question, I feel like, or I know that, especially as women, we come from backgrounds where, like you were saying, things like this have normalized. And we have to realize that, like, before women didn't deserve it before either, but they were like they were under certain circumstances where they felt like they needed to write these things out. Like women are only allowed to own things. Like not so long ago, we really had to depend on a man to survive. But I feel like what people are forgetting now is that we are so much more independent. We don't need these toxic relationships and to stay in these toxic situations. But our aunties, our elders, they did not teach that to us. Like they're not. I was talking to Naomi yesterday on our episode on my podcast and everything about how it feels like that our elders kind of checked out when it came to the care of us. And I understand it's because, they didn't have that for themselves, but it's really like enlightening to see that we are in spaces now where we are waking up and talking about these things. Because for me, the gray area didn't become evident until like I was saying, it felt like bodily. Like I would be with somebody, like mentally I'll be like, oh yeah, this is cool, I'm vibing. But my body was rejecting this person. When I had an abortion a few years ago. That's why I work with Planned Parenthood to tell my story and everything. And mentally, everything felt right. Like I was like, okay, cool guy, doing great things. But when I realized when it came to our sexual relationship, he would always like I would say no, but he would push it. He would coerce me into moving on. And I didn't realize until I talked to somebody else about it that my pregnancy was because of rape. And it completely like turned a lot of like it made a lot of things make sense in my head. And after my abortion, I had like this deep talk with myself and with my ancestors and everything. I was just like, what have I been doing? Like, and I know that my assaults aren't because of me, it's everything to do with the perpetrator. But what about me is can I work on so I don't fall into these traps more often? And I realized it was because I didn't, what's the word? What am I saying? I think I lost my train of thought. But I didn't have standards going into relationships. I didn't sit before I even because everybody's saying, oh, relationships are good for you. Everyone needs a partner, but they don't they don't specify that it's important that you have that relationship with yourself first. And if you don't have those standards, if you don't know what love is to yourself, you can just accept anything that feels good until it gets to that point when it doesn't. But so a lot of times when we get to the point that it doesn't, we already so invested mentally that we feel like we need to stay into it. But until that happened to me, nothing clicked. And I just want to make a future where we don't have to get to that point anymore, to that breaking point where something bad happens to us. I feel like these conversations can make these things very preventative.
I would say with my experience, there was a lot of gray area for me. First, like as I shared earlier, I didn't really know that intimate partner violence was a thing. And so what happened with me was it was somebody I was dating at the time. So that made it feel complicated because I was like, well, we were dating, and so like, I don't know, does that not like does it count? But like, does it count? Like, what does that mean? Um, there was alcohol involved in the specific situation as well, which made me question, you know, what if I did say something? What if I, what if I did this or did that? But, the day after, it's like you can feel in your spirit when something isn't right. So that's like and I had never felt that way with any intimate partner before, but I knew like, okay, no, that wasn't what was supposed to happen. And I was also very clear with that individual before about kind of my boundaries around things. And so for that to happen, when I was intoxicated was definitely something I saw like they knew that they were crossing a line. It was also a gray area because it was um it was a friend and it was somebody I cared about and it was like connected to my social group as well. So I feel like it made it more complicated to admit that something happened to me when it's like, well, that's somebody like I don't know how to explain. It was a friend, so it felt like, well, are my other friends gonna believe me? Um, so yeah, it was just there was a lot of gray areas in my situation which made it difficult to even define what happened to me at first, especially because I didn't have the words for it. So yeah.
Thank you all. As we go into our next question, I'm thinking about our community's normalization of toxic relationships that are glorified in social media, as Jennifer mentioned, and the acceptance of men like Chris Brown, Tory Lanez, Boosie Badass. What are some unhealthy behaviors that are normalized in young adults? And survivors, how did social media or like our current digital age influence your relationships or your experiences positively or negatively?
I could start that one. Social media had a lot to do with why I didn't tell the truth at first because when that happened to me, or when I was talking about when I was first assaulted, I was 14. And then it happened again when I was 15. Not even like it was only a few months after then. Um, the reason I wasn't able to be honest with the police is because like I've seen online of all the people talking about like they had worse cases. Well, it feels bad. It feels odd to say worst cases because assault is assault. But I I I feel like a lot of people think that when it comes to rape, it's always, or they think of like violent things. They think of like, oh, your life was held at gunpoint, or this person has a knife. It feels like your life is in danger. But sometimes rape can be silent. Sometimes it can be it can't it's not physically abusive, but it can be very mentally abusive. And because of what I was seeing online with people that had like these horror stories what I thought compared to mine, and they didn't get their justice, I was just like, then why would anybody believe me? Like this woman has the DNA, she has the truth, like the proof that this happened to her, and I don't. So what about me is gonna like prove this to be right. You know what I'm saying? Like and it sucks to see situations like that and seeing how many people back up the predators when these things happen or they question the woman. Nobody ever believes Black women. Oh, actually, I'm gonna change that narrative. We need to start believing Black women, but in the past, they have not. And that added a lot of weight to my situation, especially as a child, because like again, I was in a new school. I didn't want any rumors going around about me. I was thinking about things that children think about, you know? So seeing that online really disencouraged me, to be honest. And I kind of just like swallowed it and I numbed it out for years. Like I and overindulged in drinking and like for years to come. And I feel like that's exactly what led me into more situations. Like what Kennedy was saying, a lot of my assaults were while I was under the influence. And I didn't even know then that if you're under the influence, you can't give consent. Like nobody talks about these things. So yeah.
To share a little bit about my experience, um, I can't necessarily say I had any influence from like celebrities on social media, but I can speak for my immediate environment with where I was from. I come from a very small town in Connecticut, Stratford. It is very small, but it is so small to the point where like your neighbor most likely saw you grow to a grown woman. The person Joe down the street knows where you work. It's a very small town. And because of how small the town was and the fact that, because we're in close proximity, all of us had each other on social media and we are going to the same middle schools and high schools and stuff. My abuser had a very strong presence on social media. Um, she was, I'm not even going to try to glorify the situation, but I guess you could say at the time she was a representation of anyone that was queer in our neighborhood at the time because we didn't have a lot of representation. So she had a lot of followers. People were digging her. And I believe that that's what influenced my inability to speak out about what was happening while we were dating because I couldn't confidently go to my peers and say, "Hey, by the way, your favorite follower is a fucking abuser." Sorry to curse. But so that was really hard for me to do that. So that's how like social media played a negative role in my relationship. And then like what Jennifer brought up, the digital monitoring was a huge thing in our relationship, even things down to, I won't forget, I think on my 17th birthday, she probably sat up at 12 a.m. on the dot and like waited for the happy birthdays to come in and probably questioned me about every single person that commented, "Happy birthday. How do you know them? Who are they? It's a man. I thought you don't like men." Like it would just be like a long night of just bullshit. And I would say if my answers did not line up with what she wanted to hear, or it didn't follow with me blocking my uncle on social media because she couldn't believe that this young guy, this young Jamaican guy, was my uncle. It was like a never-ending battle. Um, so yeah, it definitely played a negative role in my relationship for sure.
I'm also thinking of Megan Thee Stallion and her work to fight for her own justice and how she's been beaten down, sorry for the language, in the media and by her own community, unfortunately. How can we center Black women's voices in this work without isolating them with the narrative of victimhood? Some of you touched on it earlier about how, historically Black women weren't allowed to be soft. They had to fit into these caricatures of strong Black woman, Mammy, Jezebel, so on and so forth. So what does that look like for us now?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question one more time? I'm sorry. I'm a little.
That's okay. I'm thinking of Megan Thee Stallion and her work and her fight for justice and how she's just been beaten down by media and her own community. So how can we center Black women's voices in this work without isolating them in the narrative of victimhood?
I think well, I'll say from what I've seen in both research and in practice, one of the biggest things when it comes to centering Black women's voices, and in this case, Meg Thee Stallion, honestly, is challenging cultural responses that dismiss their pain or frame their trauma as entertainment. Like it's ridiculous. And one thing I'll even say into that, pointing that out is again, when we even talk about survivors or victims of intimate partner violence, there is this narrative that even goes with that. So if a lot of times Black women don't even fit this narrative because we don't look like quote unquote victims, right? And that's also confusing, right? If I don't look like a feeble, like cowering in the corner, typically imagery is connected with white women. If I don't fit that narrative, then I must not be a survivor. This means that something bad just happened to you, right? But it kind of diminishes like that level of trauma. Ryan Simone has mentioned several times trauma is going to live in that body regardless if you can acknowledge it or not. Your body knows what happened, right? And a lot of times it takes a while for your mind to catch up, but your body is still acting within that trauma. It is still holding that trauma within, right? Now, leads, and research has shown how what that even led to. That could lead to autoimmune diseases. It can lead to other diseases. It literally has so many health implications, but not to go on a tangent on that direction. But no, we really got to start challenging these cultural narratives around Black women. We have to really acknowledge the pain and acknowledging like what those cultural factors that contribute to why they make the decisions that they make, right? We can't, we're not, we, first of all, we shouldn't be judging nobody in these situations. And but social media has created a culture that everyone is so quick, everyone's an expert. I don't know when everybody became an expert, but everybody's an expert and everybody got something to say. Everybody's judging. It's ridiculous, right? And so it's just really, really being able to acknowledge that. And then also allow Black women to define their healing and what that might look like, either publicly or privately. If we see every time you see Megan Thee Stallion doing something, it's oh, she over it. The trauma's done. She outside having a good time. Let survivors heal. I don't know why that's such a thing. Again, it fits this narrative of what a victim and survivor is supposed to look like. They're supposed to be cowering in that corner, crying for years, not doing anything else, and that it constantly contradicts the narratives that coincide with Black women, right? And then even in other ways, as far as Black women being held to this standard of resilience, Black women are resilient. Let's not say that, but resilience should not be embedded into our survival. We should not have to be resilient every day. Okay, that should not be a part of our lifestyle. Again, I don't want to go on a tangent because we can be here till 2 o'clock, but just bringing that in, right? And then honestly, creating spaces for Black women, creating spaces for Black women to be whole, right? Being creative, brilliant, successful, healing, not always, resilient, but having space, having these conversations, being able to uplift one another. Okay, that whole tearing down process, knowing exactly what this person is going through is ridiculous. I don't know why it's easier to tear down than to uplift. I don't know what that's about, but it's so much that we can do. Um, Okay, I'll pass it along.
I was gonna say, just believe Black women the first time that they tell their story and like don't question it because logically, rarely will somebody share something that happened to somebody or accuse somebody of something and it's not true. Like, who would make up something like that to like accuse somebody of doing something to them? So, believe Black women the first time when they tell their story. And something that Jennifer was saying, it just reminded me of a part of my story. Um, with the way that the situation happened in my life, there were people around before the rape occurred that I feel like just knew something wasn't right with the situation. And so like one, like check on your friends, check on people. If you feel like something wasn't right about that, maybe follow up with them the next day because in my situation specifically, I had some male friends who were acquainted with the person who had assaulted me. And so it took a whole year for me to even confront them like, hey, like you're hanging out with somebody who assaulted me, and then them being like, oh yeah, that night I remember, I didn't really think that that was right, but you know, like excuse me. Like you were there, honestly, you probably could have stopped what happened occurring, and you knew in your spirit that something wasn't right about the situation. A whole year later, I'm coming to you telling you this is what occurred, and you're validating my experience because you knew something wasn't right, but you never checked up on me afterwards. You never tried to stop the situation when it was happening. So I think that's important as well. And connecting back to what Ryan Simone was saying earlier about how your body stores trauma, this will be short. But me specifically, about a year after my assault occurred, I had to have a surgery to have my left ovary removed because a mass grew on my ovary, and the doctors were like, yeah, we don't know what caused it. We don't know like how this occurred. And I really think it was maybe like hormonal birth control, but also I think it was the trauma that was in my body from that event that kind of caused me to have a health issue like that. So I think it's really important as well to highlight kind of how trauma and these things impact you not only psychologically but physically as well. So yeah.
How do we as a community convey the seriousness of IPV to young Black women going to college, their parents, their communities, in a way that feels empowering and not fear-based?
Um,
Honestly, I believe that this is oh, Brian Simone, did you have it? Okay. I think that when we talk about intimate partner violence, domestic violence, when we talk about these topics, they are often taboos. They're hard for people to want to talk about, especially in a public setting. And we know intimate partner violence, especially within certain cultures. I'll talk about the Black culture. It's one of those, it's not my business. What happens in the house, stay in the house, things of that nature. Right. So even just having these type of discussions are so helpful. Right. So having these type of discussions and be able to educate one another, having people have their shared experiences, beautiful. Right. These is the type of events that we really need to have within our community to debunk these myths, to be able to reduce the taboos, and to let people know this is a real public health crisis. It really is. It's not just something that's happening to your neighbor. It's not just something that's happening to your peer at school. This is a thing that is happening, and Black women are among the highest to experience intimate partner violence. So we do have to have these conversations in a way that's digestible, right? So this is a perfect example. Have to be able to have these conversations to bring bring the awareness, because a lot of times the awareness is hidden. Bring the awareness, have the conversation so that we can talk about the education. What is a healthy relationship? I'm sorry, one of the panelists had mentioned before, like, not even, a lot of us don't even have the conversation on what a healthy relationship is. What are the components? What should I look like? Making sure we're addressing not only what abuse is, but also what is healthy. Because a lot of times we're not talking about these healthy factors, right? What communication, respect, healthy boundary, having these kind of conversations on so we can understand and recognize not only what our red flags, but also what our green flags and how can we collect these green flags. So I'll keep it short.
Yeah, and to also keep it short, I think just using your testimony, like everyone in here, what we are doing, we are showing people that we can take what has hurt us and alchemize it and turn it into our power. And we've made a career out of these things. Like we're speaking up about it. We are okay. We are getting to a better place. And I think continuing to show up and show out and telling more people that these things are possible, I feel like that'll kind of put a fire under people's asses to find that for themselves as well. Because I feel like it's a lot of hope core things, like, and we just have to continue to instill hope in another with our own life.
I think also just having conversations and deconstructing this idea of, or seeing if, you know, your loved ones or Black women in your family feel like they have to protect people or feel like they have a protector mindset, I would say. Um, because I think that is some of it why people don't speak out is because they feel like they have to protect other Black men and or Black women or their community, like how you were saying, like what happens in the house stays in the house type of mindset, and just being able to break that down and like you don't have to protect the people that hurt you. You can protect other people who you love, but people that hurt you, you don't have to protect them.
Kennedy, can you just say that one more time for the people in the back? Just one more. I want to make sure everybody heard that.
You don't have to protect people that hurt you.
Hey, thank you all for being here and engaging with this conversation with our lovely panelists. At this time, I'd like to open the floor for questions, whether you're reflecting on the themes we've discussed, thinking about applications in your own work, or curious about the intersection of equity, culture, and community health. Please feel free to jump in. I welcome your questions as we shift into our Q&A section. So first, Neela had a question and she said, how did you deal with the shame people put on you? Whether it's them saying it was your fault for what happened or, sorry, that you aren't important enough for a known figure to harm you. And there was no person on that, so everyone can answer.
I can answer the second question. Um, I think um how I dealt with like the idea that I wasn't like people saying I wasn't important enough for a known figure to harm me. I think I had to build a lot of grit from this situation. I grew up, despite what my circumstances were in the household, something that was meant to make me hard. I actually grew up to be very soft. So in the beginning, it was very hurtful to see even some of my own peers that I grew up with in school kind of turn an eye to it. And it's just like, well, I mean, I don't really think that that person is really capable of that. Um, but I guess I could say something that helped me get through it. Um, Unfortunately, me and Nia talk about this all the time. That like hometown syndrome, I don't know the proper term to use, but a lot of the people that grew up in my hometown are still here and still like doing the things they were doing when I left them where they was at when I was going through this. And I guess that's something that I guess has helped me feel stronger since the situation happened to understand that even though it was meant to keep me under, and maybe to you guys, I wasn't important enough for a known figure to harm me, but my story has pushed me to go on to make a difference in the community and for the young women that look like me who are could possibly be being harmed by someone that is also a known figure somewhere else. So I guess just trying to push past everything that was expected to happen to me, I guess you would say, because kind of like what Jennifer brought up, the expectation is that I'm supposed to be somewhere in a corner, kind of quiet, sad, helpless. But I think stepping up and kind of being confident, standing in my conviction to continue to advocate for other women has definitely helped with that. Does that necessarily mean these relationships with those past peers has been mended? No, not necessarily. I'm sure anyone on this panel that did grow up in the same community as me, they could probably have their own thoughts about it. But I don't know. I guess just learning to build some confidence to speak out against it is how I dealt with it. Because in the beginning, it was definitely hard. I felt like everyone in my town hated me when I finally got out of the relationship. But then I grew to get over it, honestly. So that's my answer to that question.
And can I quickly answer a question? I know we're running on time. I saw that Taylor had asked, is there anywhere else to discuss your trauma other than this group? I feel like I'm a beautiful place to answer that question. I would like to offer my services. I have a podcast where, as right behind me, it's called Getting Straight to It, where we get straight to it. And I welcome anybody that wants to tell their story of any aspect. If you have anything important to say, hit me up. You can find me on Instagram at Ryan Sloan Duncan, and Naomi will give you that and everything. And also, I have a new title. I am a volunteer lead ambassador of this place called the Ruth Collective. They are a collective that offers support to anybody that needs assistance, particularly to abortion. So they're companion people that need to travel state to state. They give you affirmative care, or they give you the resources for that care. And we are also looking for ambassadors that would like to tell their story too. So if you are interested in any way, in any capacity, please refer to me and I would love to give you a platform.
If I could jump in, Naomi, I do see another question, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Is it Kira? And the question is, I love to hear them talk about how healthy relationships end, because not every healthy relationship is 30 years. And I would like to say, in regards to that, self-awareness is key, like really checking in with yourself. And a lot of times things change, we evolve, right? So a relationship that might have been serving us when we was 18, 21, or even last summer might not be doing the same thing right now, and that's okay, right? But we have to constantly advocate for ourselves, and we have to constantly check in with ourselves. What is it that I need right now, and can this person provide that for me? And if not, that's okay. Um, there are easy like ways in which you can, have simple conversations on these are my needs right now. Not sure, if we can meet them, and if we can't meet them, then I would like for us to, go our separate ways in which we can both have our needs be met. Right. So simple conversations like that. I can't answer the whole question, and Balkan, if any of my panelists want to chip in by all means, but similar to Ryan Simone, I do have a platform bridge where we do have a podcast, and we do have a social media page where we do provide a lot of information, again, not only on intimate partner violence, but what is healthy relationships, and we have discussions related to that, so a lot of educational content. So if you want to check that out for a more developed answer, by all means, feel free.
Okay, thank you all so much. As we come to the end of this event, I want to take a moment to honor the depth, honesty, and brilliance that has been shared in this space today. Conversation like this reminds us that public health is not abstract, it is lived, it is felt, and shaped in everyday realities of our communities. What we discussed today reflects more than frameworks or theories. It reflects people's stories, their struggles, their resilience, and the systems that must evolve to truly support them. Each of our panelists brought forward insights grounded in practice, scholarship, and lived experience, and I'm grateful for the clarity and courage they offered. I hope this dialogue encourages all of us to rethink what equity looks like in real time, to challenge narratives that limit our imagination, and to move forward through solutions that honor culture, dignity, equity, and justice. As we leave this space, I invite you to carry forward one question. What responsibility do we each hold in ensuring that our communities are not simply surviving, but thriving? What role, student, practitioner, advocate, researcher, neighbor, do you have within this system to shift the system through intention, compassion, and action? Today's event has been streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded across all of our platforms so this conversation can continue to reach, teach, and impact communities beyond this room. If you'd like to stay connected, keep up with future events, or even tap into the resources that we share, you can follow Rooted in Public Health on Instagram, YouTube, Substack, and LinkedIn. Your engagement helps us continue building community and expanding this work.